Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another episode of the Every Other Saturday podcast. Last week had a great guest in Eunice Talks Football. We had a great discussion. I'm glad to say I've got another great guest on, Chelsea guest, NiiNiiFC, Blue Lines TV. We had a really good discussion on all things Chelsea. Also his YouTube channel, he just passed 100k subs on YouTube. So we speak about the inspiration behind his channel, Callum Hudson-ODOI, some of the criticism of Callum Hudson-ODOI recently and NiiNii's opinion on that. It was a really interesting debate there. And also some other things as well surrounding Frank Lampard next season and basically a lot of things surrounding Chelsea. So it was a great discussion. I hope you enjoy it. If you do enjoy this podcast and the video, please give the video a like, a rate and review if you're listening to it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. But thank you once again for supporting the channel. The podcast last week did really well, so thank you for that. But yeah, let's get to the discussion. So NiiNii, the first thing I want to ask you and say congrats is on 100k. Congrats on finally reaching that landmark for your channel. How does it feel to reach 100k and sort of just the feeling around your channel at the moment, because it's an exciting time to be a Chelsea fan?
Yeah, it definitely is an exciting time. It does feel like things I've been speaking about for years now, since I started like 4 years ago, it's finally come to fruition. You know, like back then there was always like this the scare factor in the sense that with the club, with the boards, where they find that philosophy that we desperately needed. You know, I've been on with so many guests, I've spoken about this with so many people, I've made so many videos on the matter, and it feels like right now we're in the time now where all these things are becoming a real tangible thing. These things are starting to come alive. We've signed some excellent players in Ziyech and Werner, players that we'd never sign or even like win the race for these players in the first place. I mean, just even considering like when you compare that 17-18 season where we've spent 66 million on Morata, we've signed a player that's much better than him for way less than money. So I do feel like right now things are looking absolutely unreal for us, and I've never been so excited to be a fan because yeah, everything that I've been hoping for and dreaming of is finally becoming a reality right now. So in that sense, it is really exciting now that I've just touched on like 100,000, and you know, it feels like the club to they're on their next stage right now. You know, it feels like we're on that next level. Everything's like Chelsea 2.0 right now. But to keep it absolutely real, I've never really been super motivated by just like the numbers. So when I got 100,000, that's why there was no like tweets saying, you know, you guys look at me, I've got 100,000, you know, praise me. So it's not really something that really bothers me. I think it's nice that so many people, you know, feel about the game like I do. You know, that's always nice to have. But in a sense, yeah, it's just another number, to be honest.
I think that humility is something that, unfortunately, I think, you know, we've discussed this before. Like, I think it's lacking in some parts online. I think it's a good thing to have because, like, as you'll know more than me, it's like some days, if you're putting out videos quite regularly, some days videos will do better than others. And
Yeah.
there's no sort of secret to this. Like every video I make, and I'm sure it's the same for you, similar efforts go into them. It does, like the views themselves, and if you were to just judge it on views, like your morale and sort of your confidence would go up and down all the time. And that's, I'm sure, something we all have to adjust to when we make videos. But I think that's a healthy aspect to have because as well, it's connected to being a Chelsea fan. So if it can, you know, whether you have a conflict of interest or sort of your emotions are so tied to how the club does. I mean, I think having that is definitely a healthy way. And the thing I wanted to ask you was when you started this channel, what was sort of the thing that inspired you to make a channel, start talking about Chelsea, start spreading and sort of start sharing your ideas on football?
To be honest, I felt like there were a lot of people like us out there that wanted to like a more engaging type of football discussion that wasn't based on things like the basic like football banter and the tired like recycled conversations where there's like no depth, no like you know, tactics aren't even thought about as well. You know, that side of the game is completely ignored, and I just felt like I wasn't getting that from the media. I wasn't getting that from YouTube channels either, and I just felt like, you know what, I've been such a geek about football for years. Like everyone that knows me, you know, I've been speaking football like, why am I speaking like such a weirdo today? I've been speaking about football like this like for years. It's just how I like analyze the game and speak about it. So I felt like with YouTube, with a platform that you know, the platform it is, I felt like I could just find a good way to use my passion, find an outlet for my passion basically. And yeah, I didn't have any ambition to think like, wow, you know, I definitely have a plan. I want to be like huge, massive. I'm, you know, I know I'm going to get 100,000 subs. It was nothing like that. To be honest, I thought it might take me a bit longer to get 100,000 subs, to be honest. But again, numbers like that have never been my motivation. Like, I'm not someone that has like an Instagram account, for example. I'm not someone that's ever really cared about social media like that. You know, I only made a Twitter account because of my YouTube channel, and that came like maybe like a few months afterwards, to be honest. So you know, for me, my only passion is about just speaking about the game and just trying to produce content that, you know, a lot of like-minded fans can enjoy and obviously take something from.
You definitely get that from your video, sort of the insight and the depth you go into each video. I think it is refreshing. I think just one thing I wanted to sort of ask you was, because of course, you know, I guess, you know, if you were to say football YouTube, how big it's been, would you track it back to maybe 5-6 years ago? You know, I started my channel in 2014, so maybe a little bit before then. Sort of seeing your channel and seeing how it's grown, how have, like from the outside, how have you seen the football sort of community evolve? Do you think it's improved? Do you think it's regressed? Do you think there are things that you'd like to see? Or is it just like, as you've been saying, you know, just focusing on yourself? How would you sort of evaluate not only the Chelsea community, but the football YouTube community?
I think since I've you know, become part of the community, I kind of feel like it's the same. I haven't really seen anything different, and maybe not that I'm disappointed, but it would be nice if maybe there was a bit of evolution in terms of like dialogue and how we speak. I think there's some, you know, small glimpses of like some nuance creeping in. I think now that certain people are, you know, I think with how stats have been so available now for people, we're seeing people using that FBR brief website and stats bomb to great effect. And I think that that's definitely had a new dimension to like conversations on social media. And it's definitely got people thinking about the game a lot more differently. So that's like a small positive I've seen so far. But to be honest, I think it's kind of the same. I think it's, if you look at like most fan channels too, would you say that they've really evolved, or they're doing the same thing that they were doing all those years back anyway?
But, you know, I think that I think it's something that's important if we want this to last, you know, or we want people to be interested in it, because as you've stated, fans are a lot more educated and have the ability to be a lot more educated about their clubs and about players and games than they could, you know, 5-10 years ago. And I think that not taking advantage of that, lots of free information as well, not just like paid subscription that you get, but lots of free information that you can get. I think it's a bit of a shame when, as you've shared that frustration, when you watch mainstream punditry just seems so reductive to me still. You know, I get very frustrated when I'm watching a expert who's played the game at a very high level speak in such simplistic terms. Like, don't tell me what I've just watched. Show me something that I don't know. Tell me something as a fan at home. I won't know. I don't know if you share that same frustration.
No, I 100% do. And I think that's one of the other motivations of why I wanted to produce my own content, because I felt like I wanted to be a reaction to that, you know, the sterilized type of like football conversation. I feel like a lot of times it's really focused more on sensationalism, with sensationalist headlines, talking points, no nuance or insight or depth. And what disappoints me, that the same as you, is that these ex-pros that have played the game at a, you know, the highest level you can possibly think of, working under, you know, amazing managers, playing in European games, just, you know, just even knowing how the industry is, where, you know, you're like in your like little like uni hall room with the coaches like going through tactics and telling you what the game plan's going to be. You know, it's very professional. So when that doesn't really translate, you know, across the media to like the common fan, I feel like maybe they're not really giving enough fans enough credit to understand that part of the game. And if anything, it just fuels this type of boring, like sensationalist talk. Like I think sometimes on YouTube, I'm seeing that there's more and more channels that focus more on that sensationalist part. For me, like adopting like the old media approach, and they're obviously creating content today using those same methods. And my thing is, you don't have to do that. You know, this is a platform where you're fully in control of your channel. You can do whatever you want with it. You can be fully creative. You can be in depth. And it's just a shame that that's not really the main motivation for, you know, some that I'm seeing. But I don't know. I just think that for me, I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I'm going to maintain, because again, I'm about my principles. You know, when I live my life, I like to think of, you know, what's like the right moral thing to do. I know it's quite like an old-fashioned thing, and like a lot of times I do hear from like my girlfriend, or, you know, it's like you should have been born in the 60s or something like that. You're a bit too old school sometimes. But I don't know. I just think like, you know, values, principles, I think that's timeless, to be honest.
No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, that's certain things that I care very deeply about on my channel as well. And I think we share both of that sort of passion and sort of feeling that, you know, principle on a channel, you know, doing what actually makes you passionate and what, you know, makes you happy at the end of the day. You know, whether a video gets, you know, a lot of views or it doesn't get any views, as long as I know when I'm putting it out, I'm proud of that work. I think that's the main part to me, because if I started doing something that wasn't really reflective of what I actually was, maybe I'd get more success quickly. But like, I think inevitably I get tired of it. I couldn't put that act on long. So I think you have to be yourself and you have to really do what's natural to you. Because I think as well, as we're talking about the audience, I think the audience is much more smarter now and they can see through it now than maybe they could 5 years ago. Yeah,
of course. I mean, you know, audiences, again, you know, I'm someone that's been watching YouTube all my life as well. So I've been inspired by so many people. I've seen, you know, I watch all types of different videos and content on YouTube. So I feel like, you know, I know how like a viewer thinks, because obviously I'm one myself. So, yeah, you know, I just think that as it is with you, I couldn't put something out there that I'm not really feeling. I mean, like every week there's about maybe 3-4 videos that I don't upload because as I'm recording, it's not sounding how I want it to, or maybe it needs a bit more detail that right now I don't have the time to really delve into like that. And I just won't put it out there. And I know that of course I could, and that's a lot of money that I'm missing out on for not uploading it. But, you know, I feel like there has to be like that balance between quality. And you know what, to be honest, I think when you get into YouTube, you need to like have real honest questions with yourself. You know, are you in it to, you know, make a lot of money and live comfortably, which you're entitled to? You know, I'm not some guardian that's like looking down on people. I really don't do that whatsoever. That's up to you. And of course, you have to understand, you know, you have to ask yourself as well, are you someone that maybe if you care more about the quality of the content, you might have to accept that you're not going to be super big, you're not going to get super riches. But if you're keeping to yourself and what you want to do, that's that, you know what I mean? So I think that there's so many like different approaches to, you know, content creation and stuff. But, you know, as long as people are honest to themselves, I guess that's all that really matters.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great advice to anyone watching this who is thinking about starting a YouTube channel, because I get comments on my videos talking about, you know, they want to start their YouTube channel, and I think that's brilliant advice. Moving on to some Chelsea stuff. I know you made a video recently about Willian and Pedro. Of course, that confirmation the other day. I mean, it feels a bit surreal to me, to be honest, because for months we've been talking about it, and I'm pretty sure the last time we were on the channel, I'm sure maybe this was something we touched on, because it felt like Willian and Pedro, this was going to be the end of their Chelsea careers. But now it's happened. It does feel quite somber, like the end of an era. I was writing a piece about Willian last week and going through his time at Chelsea and the highs of his Chelsea career, his best moments. Sort of your feelings on Willian, because Willian was the big news. Pedro we've known about for weeks, so maybe you want to touch on Pedro as well. But I think specifically Willian, considering how long he's been at the club.
Yeah, I think in typical Chelsea fashion for players that have been here for a long time, you know, when they sign, you know, the fireworks, just like firing everywhere, you know, all the glitz and the glams there. But when they leave the club, it's very anticlimactic. You know, Pedro picks up an injury. I mean, when does that even happen? You know, final game like that too. And Willian as well, not being able to play his final game against Bayern Munich, picking up an injury himself. And, you know, follows in line with guys like your Lampards when he left Man City, your Drogba's the first time, your Terry's. There was no, I mean, again, there was a send-off for Terry, final game of the season, but you know what I mean? It's for me, like when I see that, it reminds me that, you know, at the end of the day, even though we have that emotion for football, it is still like a business. It's still quite cutthroat, and you know, it's not always gonna, you know, end like that. But for me, I think are we making the best decision allowing Willian to leave right now? I just think that considering that we need to sell players now to raise funds to sign other ones, maybe it makes sense to have kept a Willian who has that experience and knows the club already. That could have been useful for the other guys coming to the club to acclimatise, because he's a very popular player. Maybe it would have been the best decision to give him the 2-3 years, knowing that, okay, well, if you don't want him, you can sell the player on because he has 2-3 years in his contract. So I'm not too sure about that, to be honest, especially when he's going to Arsenal as well. So I think we definitely missed the ball there. But, you know what I mean, man, I feel like maybe Willian, especially when I've like really just like reconfigured how I saw the player, because back, especially during the Conte season and, you know, Mourinho seasons prior, I'd always criticized Willian. I've always criticized him for starting to play down the right hand side, for, you know, messing up the final passes, for not really having a goal threat, and, you know, looking quite mechanical in a sense, you know what I mean? But when people kept telling me, when I'm hearing things from coaches and players non-stop praising him, and people that I know who have ties in the industry speaking positively about him too, I like to tell myself I'm objective. Like anything that any opinion I have, I like to stress test. I like to really tell myself, okay, this is how I feel about it, but will I feel about this next week or next month? You know what I mean? So in that sense, I had to look at what Willian was bringing to the game, and from doing that, I realized, oh, this is why he's valued so much. And then it made me start thinking about just the nature of how teams are constructed, how managers find balance in teams, because there's no team out there that has like 11 players full of 11 attacking players doing their thing. There's that mixture of balance, either from midfield players, like for example with Barcelona, when they use that front three of Neymar, Messi, Suarez, those guys aren't going to do any pressing. You have to understand that. So to find that balance in the team, the midfield had to do more running. And that's why guys like Iniesta weren't really getting like double digits for assists anymore, because he had a different role to do. But that's what you had to do for the balance of the team. Looking at Liverpool, for example, too, their front three, to find that balance, they need a playmaker in Firmino who has to, link up the play for Salah and Mane to get that front three working. And obviously just applying those principles, just seeing how, teams normally play and how managers find the balance. It was just like, how did I miss this? That Willian is that glue in the team that we need. And this is why he's playing all the time. This is why managers have valued him. And this is why players value him too. Because when you play, we've all played football. Sometimes it's frustrating playing ball with guys that just want to carry the ball for themselves and just do their own thing. You always appreciate the players that think about the balance of the team, that know how to play the pass at the right time, that do the right thing in the right time, that know how to become a passing option under pressure. Yeah, I think those types of details, it's not sexy, it's not something that you're going to maybe pay to see, but it is something that is fundamentally important. And I think even though Willian plays that role, I still think he provides his own flair to that. I think his first touch is incredible. His acceleration too, is a very smooth and elegant looking player. So I do think that if you are going to just judge him by the goals he scored and the assists, you're kind of missing the whole point, to be honest. So I think that Willian, for me, very underrated. Him going now, I can imagine next season, so many fans on social media especially are going to turn against him. They see him playing against Arsenal. And I don't know, comparing him and Pedro, I kind of feel that maybe Pedro was warmed to more because of the wonder goals he scored. Because, and the reality is, how many people are going to remember the details from a game that happened 2 months ago? You're not really going to do that. But if a player scored a 30-yard goal, you'll never forget that. And one game in particular that really summed it up for me with Pedro was the game against Everton. I think we all remember that goal he scored against them. Now, what was funny is because in that game, he didn't really play well. He was constantly losing the ball and was that typical Pedro performance. But because he has that in his locker, all those negatives were forgotten about. And he's only remembered for the fantasy stuff, basically. You know what I mean? So for me, I was always more critical of Pedro because I thought that maybe, you have to bring the goals in the team. And at times, you're not really doing what you're supposed to do, compared to Willian, who wasn't really ever in the team to get goals or even be like the playmaker, because he was playing down the right-hand side. As I said in the video, if you're Willian down the right-hand side, what goals are you expecting him to have? Like a charisma type of outside the foot shot? I mean, that's literally the only way he could really, when he's cutting inside, that's the only way you can possibly score. So I do think that, Willian has to be he has to be reevaluated by many. I think that he's got a lot of unnecessary hate. And I think that it's a shame because he's been a very good player for us over the past 7 years.
I definitely agree. I agree with specifically Willian, because I think the one strong thing in Willian's favour is whenever someone criticises him, especially on social media, and says, why has he been at Chelsea for so long? Why has he got all these minutes? I'm like, the fact that multiple managers over his Chelsea career, and not just these have been very good top coaches, Antonio Conte, Jose Mourinho, Maurizio Sarri, have all picked him continuously, and Frank Lampard this season. I mean, you could make an argument.
Brazil too, yeah.
Yeah, it's you could make an argument this year was his best at Chelsea, because I think he had a lot of responsibility as one of the older players to step up, because I felt actually under Sarri he had probably his most underwhelming season going back through his career, and I think there was a lot of pressure from fans, including myself. I felt this was maybe the time to refresh the front three, but I think he proved this year more than any other why he was so valuable to our squad. And I think when you look at those title wins, especially the Mourinho one, he was a key component of that team. And the unfortunate thing for Willian was I think he was always compared to Eden Hazard, and Eden Hazard was a ridiculous player, and he was always going to dominate Chelsea's attacking play. But as you've stated in your video and just there, you need those players. Like the best Chelsea teams, the 0405 team, had some world-class players, but they also had some hard-working players that you need that are unfashionable. But, I think that Willian, definitely for me, I think he's been a brilliant servant for the club. I disagree. I think this is the right time for him to move on. I just think if we are going to create sort of this next sort of era of Chelsea, I think Frank Lampard, who I'm sure probably would have wanted to keep Willian, I think if we kept Willian another season, even though I think he's a good squad player, I just think narratively, even though of course that doesn't relate to the context of the quality within a squad and how you're going to win football matches, but just I felt it was just a natural endpoint for me, because I felt it would have been just clinging onto the past a bit too much for me. You can keep Dave because I think Dave's still got a year left in him, and you've got a young Reece James there still developing. But that's sort of my opinion on Willian, and I think he definitely has been harshly criticised over the years.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I have to say I agree and disagree. I agree in the sense that for me, as you expressed, Sue, the sentiment felt like this was going to be Willian's final season, even before the season started. So I think when it came to Pedro and Willian, that was kind of the vibe people had. But I had to change my opinion just seeing the benefit he had in this team. And I think that if Willian was to sign, I mean, we know that Lampard speaks to players, and he's not like previous managers that will just like ignore someone and not tell them the reason why they're not playing. If Willian had signed that 3-year deal, I think Willian would have accepted and known that, okay, I know that I'm not going to be here to, playing week in, week out, but I'm going to be a squad player that's going to compete still, raise the level of the overall standard in training and stuff like that, and provide that experience too, because the reality is we have a lot of injuries to attacking players, and I'm looking at your HUDSON-ODOIs and Pulisic's. I can imagine them still getting injuries from next season. And I just think, I don't know, considering that we were thinking about getting a fourth attacking player, even keeping Willian for one more season and then maybe selling him on at the end. I mean, he had 2 years left, and I'm sure he can get at least a good, 5 to 10 million for his sales. So I don't know. It's interesting. It is, but I don't think this ends anything. I think we're still going to be quite good. If anything, maybe your Hudsons and your Pulisic's and other players like that will feel more like, wow, now that there's one less player to compete with, now it's my time to really just stake my claim in this team and get as much game time as possible.